So, just to go over, for anyone who is new to this stream or this video, we're gonna be going over complexity gaming today in a deep dive analysis. We're currently in day 9 of this stream streak. And as we can see, every single day we go over a new team that is currently at the RLCS Major. And here we go. These are the 16 teams that are at the RLCS Major. Ooh, I need to get my initial predictions up here. Here we go. But here are the 16 teams at the RLCS Major. Let's see if I can keep them in track. We went over G2, Crew, G1, Vitality, Dignitas, and Falcons. And then we've gone over Liquid. And then we've gone over Pioneers. Alright, so those are all the teams we've gone over so far. Today we're going over Complexity. And then tomorrow we'll probably go over... Oxygen. And that would leave the top 2 seeds from NA and EU. That's 4 teams. And then we have Ground Zero that we have to do. Then we have Secret that we have to do. That's 6. And then Gaming Gladiators. Alright. So overall, should be fun. Here's all the major teams. Currently, we're going to be going over Complexity Gaming. If you're wondering what we go over in these deep dive analysis, we're trying to find the weaknesses of the individual players. And then we're trying to find the strengths of the team. And then the weaknesses of a team. And, because at the moment, whenever we look at the RLCS teams, especially when we're going to a major event, we want to be looking at the weaknesses of teams, because normally the weaker teams are going to be the teams that end up winning. There has been a few exceptions in the past in regards to weaknesses. One of those was Furia, where offense-wise, their strengths really outweighed their weaknesses on land because they were able to play with confidence. Whereas whenever we look at a team like G2, even though they don't have a lot of weaknesses, individually they have a hard time being confident on certain lands. Another one of those teams that can be abnormal is Falcons, because they have a really high skill floor, but they don't really have a high ceiling. I'm just trying to think. Pioneers in the past have also been kind of a team that had some weaknesses, but overall their strengths helped them out. But now they actually don't have a lot of weaknesses compared to some other teams. As we can see, our 3 weakest teams that we've analyzed so far: Crew Esports, and then G1, and then Team Vitality. A lot of weaknesses, and Vitality definitely have a lot of weaknesses on the individual spectrum as well. Whereas G1 individually didn't look horrible, but it's more, we couldn't tell individually how good they were because the team itself was giving away possession, didn't know how to rotate properly, and overall, just the only thing they had really going for them was they filled in some sort of rotation really, really fast, and their passing was actually really solid as well. But when it came to everything else, it seemed they don't understand the structure of the high-level game. Massive inconsistencies due to that. Players individually just do what they want to do. No team stuff, right? But Complexity, it should be a good change of pace from these EU teams. Because at the end of the day, EU teams are very solid. We've already analyzed the one EU team that we've looked at so far that has actually looked really, really good was Team Liquid. As we can see, there's not a lot of individual mistakes. And there's not many weaknesses, and there's like some good strengths as well. Even compared to G2, G2 have a lot of individual mistakes, but then look at the teams. There's barely any weaknesses when it comes to the team. And we will be posting all these notes on a Google Doc at the end. And then, after we're done with all 16 teams, I will post the Google Doc to Twitter and probably Reddit too, Discords, for casters to be able to use it, coaches to be able to use it, anyone who wants to be able to. And honestly, you don't even have to be a caster or coach. If you just enjoy watching Rocket League, you can use this as a tool to be like, oh, okay, well, they're definitely looking very solid here. It looks like we're still seeing some weaknesses that Luke ended up pointing out. But overall, it should be a good, fun time. But I think we've talked long enough. I think it's time to go into the actual analysis. Here we go. So, just to keep in mind what we're doing, and of course, if you're on YouTube, you can probably skip ahead if you've already seen this. But in regards to this, we're going to be looking at two things when analyzing high-level gameplay. We're going to be looking at how the teams handle possession, and we're going to be looking to see how the teams handle the three necessary areas of the pitch. I wonder if I can get some other coaches on here as well. Maybe for the last couple of days of the stream. It would definitely be fun. I know a couple coaches. I don't know who would be down this early in the day though. I know some do have other work they have to do. But here we go. Possession and the three necessary areas of the pitch. Now, what is possession? Well, possession's pretty easy to understand. In order to score in Rocket League, you kind of need the ball, right? So logically, why would you ever give away the ball if you have to try and just to fight to try and get it back to score a goal, right? Might as well keep the ball the entire time. Normally, the main arguments against this are, well, what if you have zero boost? Well, even with zero boost, you can still use your opponent's momentum against you, lose that 50 back to your teammate, and honestly, on occasion, you can also win 50s with zero boost and continue to go forward. Of course, normally opponents are really good at throwing in some off-ball pressure, going for a demo on boostless people, but it's still a viable option. But what if your teammates have zero boost when supporting you? Then that means they kind of failed to do their job. When you're rotating back, you should be grabbing pads to try and get into position. And even if you don't get all these pads, just 3 pads are enough to position very properly. So that's possession in a nutshell. There's no real reason why we should ever give away possession. Here we go. Hey, Sprag, how you doing, homie? I'm doing pretty well. How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Finally got to catch one of these streams. Awesome, homie. Well, I know I've coached you and your team before, so you'll be able to see some of the concepts that I've used in our coaching sessions applied here. But here we go. So that's the possession. But now we're going to be looking at the 3 necessary areas of the pitch. What are the 3 necessary areas of the pitch? Well, one is someone needs to be on the ball. The other one, we need someone to be supporting the person on the ball. And then we need someone applying off-ball pressure. These are the 3 necessary areas of the pitch that need to be covered, and how a team accomplishes this may change. For example, some may apply off-ball pressure just by grabbing a boost steal, rotating through, and then rotating out afterwards. Some teams might have a player stick around here for a little bit longer before rotating out. And some teams, they don't apply off-ball pressure at all, and for me, that is a very bad thing. We talked about 3 necessary areas of the pitch, and if you don't have someone applying off-ball pressure in any way, whether it be stealing boost, bumps, or even just rotating through for a blindside pass or even a backboard read, you aren't applying any off-ball pressure to the other team. And what essentially that means, if you're not applying off-ball pressure, means essentially you're instantly rotating out, right? And we can phrase this as, look at it like this. The only area of the pitch that we're covering is this area of the pitch, correct? Which means we're essentially giving the other team over 2/3 of the field to do whatever they want. Right? Now, would you guys want to give G2 Esports 2/3 of the field to do whatever they want? Me personally, I wouldn't want that. Would I want to give a team like Ground Zero 2/3 of the field to do whatever they want? Probably not. Would I want to give just Jorias or a Banana Head or a KV1 or a First Killer? Would I want to give any of those players 2/3 of the field to do whatever they want? No, right? And that's why off-ball pressure becomes a necessary part of the game. And here we go. And that's why we need all 3 areas to be covered. So what are the 3 areas again? Someone needs to be on the ball. Someone needs to be supporting. And someone needs to be applying off-ball pressure or trying to be useful off the ball. That's another way to phrase it. And everyone who does show up in chat throughout the stream, feel free to ask questions. I'll love to answer them. If you want to add your own analysis that we can look at, overall, it makes changes my pace for the day. So feel free to do whatever y'all want here in chat, adding on to the analysis. But here we go. So these are the 3 necessary areas of the pitch. We need always someone on the ball. We need someone supporting. We need someone applying off-ball pressure. And now, just one thing that we're making sure that everyone understands about support. Support can be done by covering the 50 and by covering the midfield pass. And what we're going to be looking for is see how optimally teams cover this spot. We're going to be seeing how optimally teams cover off-ball pressure. And we're going to be seeing how optimally they handle ball possession. And if you're wondering what I'm going to be mainly looking for when it comes to support, I'm going to be looking for support being close, behind, facing forward. Of course, when you're starting from behind, this means that ball cam wise, we can see if the midfield's open or not. And if it is open, we can go there for a pass. We're covering that passing option, right? But if our teammate doesn't pass it, or let's say we start here and someone's already covering mid, then we can either go right back in behind, or if someone's already mid, we can stay behind, right? And we're covering the 50. See, with this, we have one player covering the support roles, which then frees our off-ball pressure guy to go through and apply off-ball pressure. So that way we have all three areas of the field covered at any given time. And just to go over now, you don't necessarily need to know perfectly well, I'm sure you guys can understand, but it goes in priority as well. If no one's on the ball, someone needs to be on the ball. If someone's on the ball but no one's supporting, someone needs to fill in support. And if those two areas are already covered, we need off-ball pressure. So at any given moment, we want to make sure all three of these things are covered in at the same time, but there still is a priority. The priority is more for defense, because on defense, if there's no priority, you'll have someone applying off-ball pressure while the net is open, or while no one's supporting, right? But there is a priority. Ball guy being most important, support guy next most important, off-ball pressure third most important, but they're all still necessary, but there's a priority to them. And then, like we said about support, we want to start from behind. And we want to be facing the play, right? Because if our teammate loses the 50 and we're facing backwards, then they're probably going to get to the ball before us by the time we turn around, right? But why is it close? Why do you support behind close? Well, you could just take my word for it, but I'll give you an analogy, a couple analogies. If I throw a basketball or a ball at you, will you be holding your arms locked out in front of you and try to catch that ball with your arms locked? Or are you going to catch the ball out in front of you as you're bringing the ball closer to your chest? You're bringing it close, right? And imagine you're holding a baby. Are you going to hold the baby with the arms locked out in front of you in your hands? Or are you going to bring the baby close to you? Cradle the baby. Keep the baby close as you can. So in that one, you're in both situations, what's the main idea? You want to keep things close if you're supporting them, whether it be supporting the head of a baby or supporting a ball, making sure you're easily able to take grasp of it, right? And now, can you catch a basketball or any sort of ball with your arms locked out in front of you? Sure. Can you hold a baby with your arms locked out in front of you? Sure. And can you support in Rocket League from far away? Sure, you can. However, in all three of those situations, it's not very efficient, it's not very quick, and in regards to the baby's case, it's not very safe as well. And even in Rocket League, it's not very safe because if we're not supporting from behind, we could be giving away that possession, correct? So that's what we're going to be looking for. Hey, Avdiel, welcome to the stream, homie. How you doing, bro? Welcome to the stream. We're going to be going over team complexity today. But there we go. Hopefully, we understand support. What I'm going to be looking for is starting support close behind facing forward, and then seeing if they're able to recognize that the midfield's open or not, and they can go there for a pass. But what I also want to see is if no pass comes, I want to see that rotation to cover in both areas of support. For example, some players have this issue. One player is Chicago. He is, even though JNAPS and Atomic are able to do this really, really well, we can see Chicago tends to go mid from this position, but then for some reason he gets lost if the pass never comes to him. If a pass isn't coming, cover the other option while the other players are applying up pressure and going up the field. But Chicago still has issues with that. And there's some teams that don't have an idea of structure at all. One of those teams being G1. We looked at them a couple days ago, where they have no structure. They seemingly give away the ball for free. For me, the worst team that I've looked at so far has been G1. But the worst team and worst individuals we've seen so far has been Team Vitality. We see a lot of individual mistakes and a lot of weaknesses. Whereas G1, I thought they had a lot of individual mistakes, but compared to Vitality, they don't. And they have a lot of team weaknesses. So the weakest team right now is G1, but the weakest team of individuals is Vitality. Because Vitality, they actually have a really good structure, but the individuals themselves aren't as solid. So that's the question. On LAN, is the stronger individual team going to do better? Or is the stronger team going to do better? That's the big question that we're going to be asking ourselves after we're done analyzing all 16 teams. But there we go. Now that we understand what we're looking for possession and 3 necessary areas of the field. Let's actually get into the analysis, everybody. But here we go. We're going to be going over complexity. Their group is a pretty stacked group. And I keep rethinking my groups, but I think the most stacked group has to be Group D. We got Pioneers, who have a lot of LAN experience. We have Complexity, who did really well at the LANs they do get to. Oxygen and Groups do really well. And Gen G are just one of the best teams in the world right now. So very, very difficult. And for those of you who say that, well, Pioneer should lose this, judging by our notes here from Pioneers, individually, they may not be as strong as other teams, but individually, they're still really good. And even the weaknesses they do have actually make up for some of their individual mistakes. So even though there are some weaknesses, Pioneers are actually a really solid team this time around. And if you don't know Hunter, 15-year-old GOAT, he is very, very mechanical. Pioneers have it the hardest? True, true. I do get what you mean. Pioneers do have the hardest group, but Pioneers could still win. So for me, these were my initial predictions. People tend to tell me that I have an OCE bias, so I made sure to try and make up for that in the best way that I can. Because I do believe that Crew or Pioneers will make it out of groups. I do believe that one of these two teams will make it out of groups. I think after the analysis so far, Crew is the more likely one to make it out of groups, but I still have Pioneers winning a game. We can see here, if we look at Pioneers, 3-1, and then 3-1 loss, and then they barely nudge out against Complexity, because Complexity, I believe, are playing for that second spot right here. But here we go, I have them losing to Pioneers. So right here, I have Complexity beating Oxygen round 1, which I think Complexity have, or at least my initial impression of Complexity, really high floor. And it's round 1 in a North American land. Complexity do really well against teams early on in lands. So here we go. Here's this. And of course, they just aren't, I think on land, Gen.G will have improved from last land, and they won the last land. So I think Complexity should win that. And then just because they're playing for second in the groups here, I have them ended up losing to Pioneers, because I think Pioneers, I think they will take a series, but as we can see, they won't make it out of groups. But here we go. And I believe all it takes is, if it goes to game 5, Pioneers actually that's how Pioneers don't make it. So there we go. That's how close the difference is there in my groups. But Group D, Group of Death, gotta represent it by it. I do have a team going 3-0, but this is not a very easy 3-0. There we go. And then we have Complexity narrowly beating out Falcons and then losing the G2 on land. I think this is very respectable for Complexity. I could definitely see Complexity mechanically showing up and making it even further than some teams maybe expect. But overall, that's where I have Complexity standing with my initial predictions at the start of this stream streak a while ago. But without further ado, let's get into analyzing Complexity Gaming. So this split, Complexity ended up getting 3rd in points. And if we look, they actually have only had a couple losses. If we look at since the start of the winter, they have only lost to Gen.G, and FaZe, the 2 regional winners this split. So that honestly should mean Complexity are a very strong team. They've only lost to these 3 teams, and they've actually also beat Gen.G in groups before. But those are their only losses in winter, and even of course in the fall they did have some worse losses. But once we started winter, they've only lost to Gen.G and FaZe, which is actually really, really solid. So time to go to the Winter Invitational. Looking at see what we're gonna analyze here from them. Complexity, what group are they in? They ended up topping their group. They ended up reverse sweeping NRG and then beating V1. So I think what we should look at from Complexity here is they should not be losing to a team like NRG. So I think what we should do is look at game 2 for Complexity versus NRG, and that's round 2, Group D. All right. Replay files. Here we go. Yo, is your camera supposed to be that blurry? I didn't even know it was blurry, homie. Let me see. Oh, no, it's not. Let's see. Maybe I can fix it. Nope. Okay. Let's see, do I have a rag or anything anywhere here? I don't think so. I have some dice from when I used to play D&D. Maybe that can clean off my... I don't know. It's probably gonna still being blurry. It might be that it can't focus. Yeah, I'm assuming so, but I don't know what it's trying to focus on. Maybe focus on my fingers here real quick, camera. Think we're good? Okay, I think we're good. It might go blurry here in a second, but overall should still be all right. Here we go, groups. That's good. All right, thank you so much. Well, welcome, Spod. Welcome back to the stream. Today we're gonna be going over Complexity Gaming. So here we go, round 2. We're going to be looking at them versus NRG. I know a lot of people want me to analyze NRG, and I might do some fun streams analyzing these teams after we're done with the 16. But it's overall, you're stuck, hard stuck, 15-30. I mean, it's the beginning of the season. That's understandable. But let's look at these stats here in this game. Of course, what we're looking at, when I look at demos, I look at the comparison of their inflicted to demos taken. Just to show, like, to see, because here we go. So CRR, he ends up dying a lot more than he actually gets demos. So that's an issue from CRR. When we look at Raise Bull, he's even. And then AJG's even as well. I would like to see this number being brought up from CRR and Raise Bull. So that's something we can look at. The off-ball pressure complexity, maybe that could be improved. Average boost amount. This is actually really low for a pro lobby. Normally the lowest score for average boost we see is like 51. Now, that's normally like the lowest score we see, with maybe one player going below that. But right here we have multiple people low on boost. Big pads wise, Razeable steals a lot of boost. Actually, yeah, he steals a lot of boost, so this is fine. What I like to look at is the stolen big pads, and then comparing it to the big pads themselves. Razeable steals a lot of big pads, so that's good. In terms of small pads, CRR tends to get a lot. EU players known for grabbing a lot of mini pads. But mini pads actually relatively high, but Squishy and Justin being this low, I mean, it just goes to show how how inefficient NRG are in their boost. But we're not looking at NRG today. Let's look at speed here real quick. Razeable being the fastest makes sense. CRR being slower than I thought he would be, but still fast. And AJJ being pretty slow. But I do want to look at the ground speed. Normally, the more you are on the ground, it means the less pre-jumpy you are and more how focused you are in reading. But it can turn the other way. If you're on the ground way too much, it could also mean you're hesitating. So it's a really fine line. But normally I find around 55 to 58 being good ground percentage. Which we can see AJG, Garrett G, CRR, and Razeable actually below this average. But CRR is actually really good at aerial challenges, so maybe we can excuse him. But without further ado, let's go into the second game here, where CRR and his squad ended up losing. Here we go. Let's start off with AJG. No one ever talks about AJG. I remember when they first came over from South America, everybody from Brazil, excuse me, not from Brazil, everyone from South America, mostly Brazil, because that's where most of the Rocket League players are, was talking about how AJG was the best player on that team. But ever since we came to North America, everyone has been talking about Razeable being the best player on the team. As you can see right off the bat, we're seeing some great possession here from AJG. He's trying to make sure he doesn't give away that ball for free. Now, he does get it's not the best of first touch, but he's able to follow it. And here we go. So I know I talked about off-ball pressure being a necessary part of Rocket League, but there's one exception to that. If you have 0 boost and 0 momentum, then you'll find that you won't be able to actually apply off-ball pressure in the way that you want. Because what happens if he actually goes for bumps here with 0 boost and 0 momentum? He's most likely going to get stuck here and not be very useful at all. If he goes for a boost deal across the pitch, it's also not going to be very useful because it's going to take him a very long time to actually get there. So if he's on 0 boost, it does make sense for him to rotate out. But this is the one exception. And normally, if he rotates out, what's going to happen anyway? Well, Razeable's going to fill in second. CRR is going to go here. CRR is eventually going to be in front of the ball. And then in just a couple short seconds, maybe by 440, by 440, CRR is the one applying off-ball pressure. AJG supporting Razeable, and Razeable's on the ball. So one player rotating out because they have 0 boost and 0 momentum isn't the end of the world. But, for example, if they do have momentum, they can carry their momentum through applying off-ball pressure. And even if they have 0 momentum but a lot of boost, they can use that boost to get up to momentum and still look for ways to apply off-ball pressure. So, yeah, this is the one exception that I'm okay with for AJG rotating out here. It does end up being a straight-up goal. We do have to analyze what ends up happening here. We're going to have to look at CRR momentarily here. So it does look like CRR isn't actively reading where this ball's going. He's kind of just facing the side of the field that the ball's on, because we can see AJG and Justin flying for this ball. But as he's getting closer, like, even if initially he thought Justin was getting the beat here, we should easily be able to tell from his POV that where this ball is going to spill out. We can see just by how AJG is approaching this ball and by how Justin's approaching this ball is going to pop out behind Justin, because AJG has a lot more of a better angle covering the back of this ball, or Justin's coming at it from a more loftier angle, and just tends to be a little bit slower here to this ball. So that ball is going to end up popping out exactly where I said it would. So CRR individually ends up misreading that play. Now, does it mean he has an issue with reading the play? Not necessarily. That could have been a one-time thing. But then right here, he ends up giving away possession. I know he's trying to set up his teammate here for a pass, but looking at Raise Bull, let's see. Maybe Raise Bull had a better angle here. Yeah, I think that's just a really bad touch there from CRR. It's not the end of the world, but as you can see, Raise Bull, he had to try and cover for his teammate's failed touch. Because CRR actually had a good pass right here. That could have been a good goal. So a passing is not the worst idea here. But since it's a bad touch, then it ends up being, that's what leads to the first goal here. So alright, so bad read from CRR and a bad first touch. Here we go. Let's see what happens here for complexity. A great read here from AJG. He ends up popping that ball high. One thing I'm noticing is whenever AJG ends up in front of the ball, he has 0 momentum and 0 boost. And this could lead to why some players here on this team end up not having the most off-ball pressure, because he ends up having to leave early. Let's look at CRR. Again, CRR, I think here was a good read. Let's see. Oh, he ends up just turning around on accident. Okay, so that's more of a mechanical issue. Raise Bull maintaining possession. CRR filling in behind. So that is a really solid structured rotation there. And a really solid adaptive rotation here. Because right here, Raise Bull, he fakes it. But here we go. CRR just fills in really cleanly here. Because what's he initially doing? He's initially filling in behind his teammate here. He's initially filling in behind for support. Raise Bull's going for the touch, trying to be ball guy. But here, the ball bounces out mid. CRR reads where that ball's going. He'll take possession. Raise Bull fill in second behind CRR, as AJG should hopefully be applying off-ball pressure on his rotation back. And if we let this play go, I think that's exactly what happens. AJG gets a demo on Squishy. CRR takes possession, and then Raise Bull fills in second. Perfect! Literally perfect rotation there from complexity. Now, maybe the possession here from CRR could have been better. Yeah, he didn't really do anything with this ball, so it definitely could have been a little bit better. But as you can see, he applies off-ball pressure. He has some momentum, and that momentum is what allows him to keep moving, going for that off-ball pressure. So already, fantastic stuff we're seeing from complexity. I do want to see AJG here. He sees the ball's getting beat over his teammate here, and this is actually a really good read from AJG. He wanted the boost, sure, but he knew exactly where Squishy was hitting that ball. As you can see, he was turning before Squishy even hit it. He read exactly where that ball was going, and he was able to force high. Now, I will say he probably forced high a little early, but he was able to get a decent 50, and Raise Bull was able to fill in behind. And look at this. We talked about how the structure of complexity was really, really solid, but let's look at the adaptive rotation here. Look at this. So right here, this is something where if you guys are in your own game, you can ask yourself, when you become in this situation where the ball is about to get hit over your head, you have one question you have to ask yourself, right? Because we need someone on the ball, we need someone supporting, and we need someone applying off-ball pressure in that order, right? All right, here, the ball's getting hit over our head, and AJG is going to be that ball guy, right? So if you know this ball is going to get hit over your head to a teammate, you have to ask yourself one question. Do I have a teammate in front of me? If yes, that means that he's applying off-ball pressure, and like we just talked about, we have a ball guy, so what's the main job that needs to be covered now? Support. And if we look from Raise Bull here, right when he knows that ball's getting hit over his head, he goes to fill in that support role, and look at this. Now, he does rotate a little bit far away from my liking, and that's where we could say maybe AJG forced a little bit too early here. But as we see, since he did fill in that support, he's able to go right back up for this ball and able to get a beat. So overall, right off the bat, we're seeing great rotations from complexity, and we're seeing great adaptive rotations for complexity. So now we have to find the weaknesses in complexity's game here. So we talked about before, CRR, we talked about earlier how he ended up misreading the play once, but doing it one time in a pro game doesn't necessarily mean he has issues with it. It becomes more of an issue if it's happening 2 or 3 times a game. That's when it becomes an issue, or if it happens in multiple replays, for example. But normally, if you're making a mistake once a game, you're making a mistake throughout the entire game. So we can see right here, CRR, he is trying to come back here to support Raise Bull. Raise Bull knows that ball's going out, but as we can see, CRR continues to rush back here. So this would be a misread here from CRR. He doesn't know exactly what's happening. If the ball's going in the back of the net, he has nothing to worry about. It's all Raise Bulls at that point. So CRR should be looking for the follow-up touch here. So I think what we're mainly seeing from CRR is when he's under pressure, that's when the rotation breaks down. So when he's either he's nervous or whatever, our goal's about to be scored, or when he's under pressure in terms of trying to maintain possession, he ends up not being able to get the best reads. But for example, like right here, he was able to get a perfect read. In the corner earlier, he was reading exactly where that ball was going. That is the second giveaway possession here from CRR. I know it's a harder play here. Looks like it was more of a pass, so I guess we can forgive CRR on that one. Ends up getting demoed, that's okay. But already, we're starting to fully flesh out what Complexity's strengths are. And this is already a complete turnaround from watching Vitality and G1 the last 2 days, where we were noticing no structure, no adaptation, and the only adaptation they had was a very inefficient form of adaptation. Oh, excuse me, that's not entirely true. Vitality did have a good structure, but the adaptation was not very good. Whereas G1 had no structure, but the adaptation on offense was at least somewhat good. So overall, we're seeing a great team here in Complexity. And now what we're looking at is the individual stuff right now. That is a little bit of a misread from AJG, looking similar to KCP, and with that flip up field. Here we go. CRR flicks that ball over. Okay, what happens here? Raise ball. He's applying off-ball pressure. He sees right here. So Raise ball thinks he needs to go for this. He tries to maintain possession. He does end up getting bumped, but it's not the end of the world here. I want to look at this from CRR's point of view just to see how it looks. CRR, he flicks it over one. Just a missed shot. He tries to go for it. And then he's on 0 boost, so he rotates behind his teammate here. So that overall solid adaptive rotations. One is solid. And honestly, Complexity are looking just as good as Falcons and G2 in terms of rotations. Here we go. CRR rotating through, just forcing. Let's see how he applies off-ball pressure. See, he has momentum. Now, now the main question is, and anyone in chat, if you feel free to answer this, why does CRR feel it's not necessary to go for a big boost here, right? As we talked about, we need someone on the ball, which AJG is filling in. Raiseball's going to fill in second here. But why does CRR feel it's not useful to go for this big boost? Anyone in chat want to take a stab at that? I do see we have a couple viewers. I don't know if we're the talkative kind, though. So anyone in chat want to make a guess as to why CRR feels it's not necessary to go for this boost here? And I have my answer already, but of course I'll give a couple of seconds here for you guys to answer, should you want to. Just seems like it wouldn't be useful if he went for that one. Exactly. So whenever we're talking about applying off-ball pressure, we're trying to be as useful off the ball as possible. So Abdiel, that's a really great answer, because if we're trying to apply... You would go for that every time? Well, at the end of the day, that's why maybe you're not pro, Taz. But welcome, Taz, to the stream as well. But the reason why you wouldn't go for this boost is, think about it. What's going to happen if CRR grabs this boost? We're still on our side of the field, and we're going to be here for a good 5-6 seconds, right? So even if we have an immediate counterattack, this boost is going to respawn, and the other team's going to take it anyway, right? So this is not applying off-ball pressure, really, because we're starting to transition back to our side of the field. That's why CRR opts to just grab pads and rotate back here. So this is a really good instance of individual skill of recognizing when it would be useful and when it wouldn't be useful. Right here, normally boost steals are useful, but since we're transitioning back to our side of the pitch, it's not useful. Wouldn't be applying much pressure given nobody on the team is near it. Yeah, exactly. There we go, and that's why he rotates out. Let's see how AJG handles it. And actually, if we notice how this happens, Raisebolt, we thought initially, but since he rotated back so quickly, Raiseball's already in a position where he can watch middle, right? So CRR, he ends up filling in second here as AJG takes the ball. So that is a little misread there from CRR, but he does still take possession. Great mechanics, of course, from CRR. But right off the bat, we see, even though initially we talked about how in the corner here, we talked initially how Raiseball can go back to fill in second, and CRR can fill in off-ball pressure here. But since CRR recognized that he couldn't really be useful at all, he fills in second faster than Raiseball, and Raiseball's actually in a better position to apply off-ball pressure. So it actually works out really well for Complexity here. But luckily for them as well, AJG is able to take possession, and then they're able to just go right back up the pitch as well. As you see, that big boost wouldn't have been useful to the play at all. There we go. Looking at this play here, he sees AJG is he misreads the 50, and I think we're starting to realize the only issue CR has with reading the ball. He has issues with reading 50-50s defensively, where I think when it comes to clears, he's able to read clears really well. He's able to read passes really well in terms of that. Now, he does turn a little bit late here, because he was flipping. That was the main issue here. He's flipping to position. That's what makes it so he's not able to turn, but as you can see, he was instantly on that ball. Now, was he able to get the best touch? No. But still, it's a good read. Now, where does that... So how does this play end up being a goal against, right? Like, how are we talking about rotationally Complexity are looking like the best team in the world, but then something like this happens? Well, this is an individual moment, right? Individually, it's not the best pass. As you can see, AJG forces it to raise ball. We have an off-ball pressure guy in AJG. We have CRR filling in second. We have all the key pieces. So if we have all these key pieces... What leads to Complexity getting scored on here? Well, we have a ball guy like we talked about. We have Raise Bull. We have an off-ball pressure guy in AJG looking for demos. And SCR are trying to fill in second behind Raise Bull here. So what ends up causing the goal here? Well, a combination of things. One, Raise Bull's pass isn't the best, which we saw earlier from CRR making a really bad pass that led to a goal as well. And then here we go. And then of course CRR, since he was flipping, he wasn't able to turn in time. Maybe he could have filled it in. So I think we've finally fleshed out some things that we could talk about for the team. So weaknesses and strengths we can write down for the team. All right. So for CRR, when it comes to reading 50-50s, so he is... Why is it not going cap? There we go. He is not the best at reading where 50-50s are going, which leads him to be slower to supporting the first man. This leads him to be slower to supporting the first man, which then leads to a better reading opponent beating him to the ball. All right. And in terms of strengths, Complexity rotationally are what would be the best way to phrase this? How did I write it for a G2, for example? I wrote down... Okay, here we go. Complexity's base rotations are really solid, as well as the adaptive part of their rotations, which shows up as Complexity being one of the best rotating / structured teams in the game, in the world right now. So this is really solid. They have someone, they always have someone rotate. So this is a really big strength here for Complexity. Will you ever do the same type of team, but instead of being teams, it would be players? I think, yeah, definitely. I think I definitely would. Because we're kind of doing that right now. We're analyzing the players and the teams, but we're kind of only figuring out the strengths as the team, right? But here we go. So Complexity's base rotations are really solid, as well as their adaptive part of their rotations, which shows up as Complexity being one of the best rotating / structured teams in the world right now. So Complexity, honestly, this is something I didn't expect. I didn't expect them structurally to be one of the better teams when going into this replay, but right now they are looking really, really good. What their weaknesses are, they tend to go for unnecessary / risky passes, which means if another team individually is great at reading the play, counter attacks would be more prevalent here. So even though, so for us, it's more down to the team goes for unnecessary passes, which means team individually is great, which if another team is individually great at reading the play, counter attacks would be more prevalent here from intercepting those risky passes. But at the same time, Complexity are normally really good at making passes. So that's something we can put down for Complexity. Great team at connecting passes and putting threatening shots on target. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. The team as a whole is great at passing, whereas when it comes down to weaknesses, their only weakness is sometimes they go for risky passes. So I think they need to get better at reading when they should pass, but when they do pass, they're good. So actually, that's really good. Great at when passing is viable. The team is great at making the passes and executing threatening shots. So they actually have an issue with, they tend to have an issue with recognizing the most optimal times to pass, which leads to some risky passes that leads to goals against versus a better, versus the team that reads the game really well. So there we go. And then Raisebolt and AJG, we haven't seen any like individual weaknesses so far. So that's what we're going to be looking. We're going to look at AJG and Raisebolt for the rest of the game here, most likely, because I think we have managed to find out the bigger issues for the team and the strengths for the team. But I'm gonna tell you guys, I love EU teams, or at least the top EU teams. I love Carmine Core. I love Team Liquid. I honestly haven't looked at Oxygen this entire split, so they will be really fun to look at. But when it comes down to G1 and Vitality, like, I'm gonna be honest, I did not enjoy watching that gameplay. I did not enjoy watching Vitality or watching G1. It was some of the, like, Vitality individually just weren't as good as their opponents, which kind of made it boring to watch. But G1, since they didn't really rotate well at all or seem to understand rotation and basic concepts, like, I really did not enjoy watching G1. But this, like, even though we're seeing some mistakes here from Complexity that I can cringe at, like, rotationally, it's just like we're seeing smooth rotations here from Complexity, even though they're about to go down in the series by 2 games against NRG. And to me, that's why I really enjoy watching well-rotating teams. So that would mean teams like Falcons. That would be a team like Carmine Core, or at least my initial impressions of Carmine Core. And Team Liquid were a very well-rotating team, but they had a lot more individual skill issues, right? So, for example, like, if we compare Complexity to Liquid individually, Liquid may be a little bit better individually. Then we look at rotationally. Rotationally, Complexity are better than Liquid, but Liquid tend to be better at recognizing good passing options. So overall, Complexity versus Liquid could be a very fun series to watch. So for those of y'all who say I'm against EU, no, I am for EU, but I am very objective. If it comes down to it, Vitality and G1 are not the best teams in the world by far right now. I mean, there's a reason why old Vitality completely got perfect swept by NRG, and NRG weren't even the best team in the world at that time. Now, individually, I could say you would probably say they were, but team-wise, they definitely weren't. Here we go. Look at these clean rotations, filling in second here behind a teammate, recognizing passing opportunities, but still reading when a teammate's going for a solo play. This is what I talked about earlier, folks. I talked about earlier. Why do you start from behind? Because when you start from behind, you can see more of the pitch, and you can recognize that the midfield's open here for a pass. Now, if we transfer this up the field here real quick, this is what's happening with CRR and AJG. So here we go with AJG right here. He saw the midfield is open. He initially went here for a pass and waited for a pass. But once he saw the pass wasn't coming, he saw the 50 was coming, he goes right back in behind to support the 50. And since we have one player covering both these options, that allows the third man to apply off-ball pressure. And of course, the ball guy just needs to maintain possession for the team, right? And this is perfect. I mean, I'm literally oozing over I'm literally oozing over Complexity and how well they are at rotating. Now, individually, are they the best players in the game? No, they're not individually the best players in the game. They have Raisebolt still very mechanical. We will still see some consistency issues, of course, with sometimes we see some passes which aren't the best. As we can see, Complexity aren't really going for any more passes. They led 2 passes of theirs led to goals, and they've kind of stopped passing. So that is a little bit of an issue. But at least they're recognizing that the goals are scored on because of their bad passes. So this is a misread from AJG, but this is probably one of the only misread that we can see, because we see it's a very fast play. For me, this is more of an awareness issue. Maybe he wasn't aware Justin was middle here, because he seems to be reading 50s and clears really, really well, but when it came to reading Justin cutting in there, he had no idea Justin was there, even though he was on his screen. So individually, we can see the players can still be slightly better, but if we compare, I mean, look at these notes right now. Like, honestly, we're pretty much done with Complexity, but look at these notes compared to Vitalities. Look at these notes compared to G1, right? But if we look at Complexity compared to even teams like Dignitas didn't have as much weaknesses as G1 and Vitality, and yet it still looks a lot cleaner. And then we look at Pioneers. Pioneers didn't have a lot of issues, but as you can see, they still have less weaknesses than Pioneers. And even to go back to the very top, we look at, say, G2. G2 actually individually have more mistakes, but they have but as we can see, the strengths and weaknesses are fairly similar. So overall, like, Complexity, like, and I think that's the main thing we do have to recognize about North American teams is, since they are really structured, since they are conceptually really good at rotating, it really does come down to individual skill and confidence, right? EU teams, even if they're the worst rotating team in the world, EU teams are going to be confident throughout the entire time. And that's why it's really hard for some teams where if they're not in, for example, like a G2. G2 have always been pretty poor against EU teams, right? And why is that? Well, rotationally, they are really, really good, but individually, they don't compare to the EU team sometimes. So, outside maybe Atomic. So that's why we can say normally G2 tend to lose to EU teams unless individually they're confident. And when they are confident, G2 beat EU teams. Looking at the Winter Major, they were able to beat Complexity when no one else could, when they were individually confident and their rotations are holding strong. Right, but when we look at G2, and then we look at when they also beat BDS at the Winter Major, right? It was a Game 5 OT, but they were able to be confident individually, and that's what allowed them to play with their rotations and show why they're the better team. For example, if a team individually isn't feeling confident, North American teams tend to not be as confident, so an EU team that might be slightly worse at rotations and better mechanically might be able to win those series. And I think that's the main difference between North America and EU, is the EU still has some, and that's why when we look at EU, we normally think about just 1 or 2 teams that might be able to be at the top. What teams are most people thinking of right now? They're thinking of Karmine Corp, Oxygen, and Liquid as being potential winners of a LAN, right? But for example, when we fully look at those teams, you compare them to EU, to NA, for example. We look at the current teams, we see Karmine Corp and FaZe would be a good matchup. But for example, FaZe, we would normally mark FaZe better than Oxygen. We would normally mark FaZe better than Liquid, and FaZe has beaten both of those teams in recent memory, if I remember correctly. So, keeping that in mind, FaZe, we can see FaZe are slightly more consistent rotationally and structurally than EU teams, and they have the individual skill to back it, right? So, imagine G2 if they had the individual skills of Falcons, for example, or even the individual skills of Gen G, or anything like that. Like, G2 would have a substantial edge on most teams. There we go. I think so, everybody, just to know what we're looking at going into the rest of the games going forward. Individually, we're seeing that CRR is not best at reading where 50s are going. It's going to be able to be slower to supporting the first man, which then leads to the better reading opponent beating him to the ball. We haven't noticed any really big individual mistakes from AJJ and Razebull yet. Most of the individual mistakes we've seen kind of comes down to the not knowing the most optimal time to pass, which all 3 of them were doing. So, now we're going to be going into the next game. What's the next game we should watch? And everyone in chat, I'll let you guys pick what game we want to look at next. If you want, we can look at a Complexity game, but I'm assuming you guys would rather look at one of these games, because we are going to go over a quarterfinal and semifinal match. But is there any one of the group stage matches that you guys want to look at? We just looked at Game 2 versus NRG. But are there any other group stage matches anyone in chat want to look at? If not, then we'll move on to the quarterfinals. You do want to look at a V1 game? Alright, so we'll look at a V1 game. Any preference on what game we look at here, Abdil? And I just got notification for this. Hey, thank you so much to Sophie for the follow. I thought you were already following me. What happened there? but thank you so much for the follow. The one they lose. So you want to look at game 1? Okay, that could be interesting. Group D, round 3. Here we go, round 3. Let's look at complexity versus V1. Just so y'all don't know, I wasn't kidding about cleaning my webcam with my D&D dice here. I mean, here we go. I think this is what is this? A D8? Yeah, 8-sided dice. Yep, there we go. Got a couple others in here as well, so wasn't lying. I got the same dice, D6. I got to show you guys this. I got more than one. There we go, D6. So we got multiple dice in here. Where'd it go? I thought I dropped it. Nope, we're good. But here we go. Complexity versus version 1. Why is there only 3 games here? The RLCS referee. We found it, boys. We found no game 3 between V1 and so they were all 2-1. 2-1, 2-1, 2. Oh wait, all 4 games are 2-1? What the heck? Oh well, I guess this game is just lost to history. I guess. I'm sure if we search it up, maybe the replay would be on here because I would assume every RLCS admin has automatic replay files on. But here we go. Let's look at demos. Demos taken versus inflicted. So Com actually died more. But if we look at CRR, he's actually even in these. AJG positive and Raisable positive. So here we go. Actually, as the day went on, complexity got better and better at applying off-ball pressure. But it also could mean against NRG, there weren't a lot of necessary demos that they had to do, since they still had some demos, but they weren't as necessary. And that's something you'll find when you go from team to team, is some teams, you don't even need a demo. Whereas other teams, you'll see that more demos come up. Whereas, for example, when we look at that last series versus NRG, we saw a lot more boost steals from complexity. Whereas if we look at it from this game mode, we still see big boost steals, but as we see, it's a lot less in the complexity game. We saw about 6.5 on average for Raisable here, but now he's at a 4.33. So against V1, naturally they found maybe V1's better at avoiding demos, or the boost steals became more are less prevalent here against them. So demos against V1 are amped up versus against NRG, boost steals are more important, which honestly makes sense because NRG tend to sit in net on defense, right? So if you steal their boost and they're a very big boost heavy team, then it does make sense. But here we go, movement wise, speed wise. So it's actually a lot slower game here. So CRR and Raisable and AJG, slower than they were even in the last series against NRG, but V1 tend to be a little bit better at counter pressuring, so it does make sense. The ground stats, a lot better here in this game from all these players. It's actually surprising to see Torment not on the ground that much. But here we go. Let's look at game 1 here. The reason why we lose. Here we go. Start with Raisable here. But as we saw, like, honestly, AJG looked really good in that last game. I do want to look individually more at Raisable. We didn't really get to look at Raisable much outside the one failed pass he got. Oh, that's a fantastic passing attempt. All right, let's see what Raisable does here. He passes it back down to his teammate. Teammate ends up faking it here. Individually, let's see what they do here. It is game 1. I think Complexity are known for having weaker game 1s. But normally they warm up throughout a series, and that's normally consistent with a good rotating team. But it could also mean on LAN that if another team gets a lot more confidence right off the bat on LAN, it could backfire as well. Here we go. So Raisable, he's going to fill in second behind AJG. Raisable with a great 50-50. Great off-ball pressure. Going for a demo in Beast Mode. Beast Mode actually had 0 demos in this series. And that's very interesting because V1 are a very demo-heavy team. That's a great touch, and oh my, how is that a goal? Okay, so a little bit of bad mechanical issue, a little bit more mechanical issues here, as that should never be a goal. Okay, so from Raisable's perspective, he should have just been able to get a free ball here. And from CRR's perspective, what was his issue? So he ends up rotating pretty bad here. He gets the 50-50, and then, yeah, he just rushed it. He had a lot more time than he thought, and he actually knew he had a lot more time here as well. And we could tell, just look at this. He sees that Calm is down in the midfield here. He sees Beast Mode pass it down. He 50s Calm. He sees Torment right there. So he should have known he had a little bit more time here. But of course, it is RLCS. It is game 1. Maybe that's the issue there. But nerves affecting CRR's first touches a couple times here. So we can actually write that down for CRR. Is when under duress, tends to rush possessive touches, which can lead to giveaways of possession as well. And you probably don't all pros have this issue. No, JNAPS had this issue, and Ocalid actually had this issue, and G1 all had this issue, and I think Sizen, no, not Sizen, Radosin had the issue as well. Some individuals have issues with getting good touches under pressure. And it normally shows the lesser mechanical players. Now, at the end of the day, if they're not getting pressured or they're not nervous, they probably are able to take the ball from point A to point B every day of the week. But so far, not able to see that. Here we go. But honestly, like, this has been a nice change of pace. Like I said, G1, completely, I hated watching G1. I hated analyzing G1. Not because I couldn't understand what they were doing. I knew what they were doing. It's just what they were doing was horrible to watch. Whereas Vitality, structurally they look good, but individually they just weren't that good. So it's kind of boring to watch Vitality. Whereas Complexity, individually they're really solid mechanically. Passing-wise, they're great at passing. And then rotationally and structure-wise, they're great at rotating. So honestly, Complexity's been really fun to watch. Here we go. I'm trying, and everyone's wondering, like, why am I not coming up with more notes for these teams? It's something that you guys, I think coaches, I think top-tier coaches that analyze gameplay will understand this. Most issues you see are found in just one game. When you look at one Rocket League game, you see all the issues normally in one game. Or at least you see the biggest issues in just one game. For example, when we looked at Liquid, I got all of Liquid's issues and strengths in one game. And then as the tournament went on, the players got more and more nervous. You think, well, as they get more and more nervous, more mistakes should happen, right? No. Actually, the mistakes they were already making just got worse. And I was like, okay, that's peculiar for Liquid. The mistakes got worse. But then we went to G2 Esports. And as the tournament went on, they didn't get more mistakes. The mistakes that they already were doing got worse. And that's been prevalent for every single team. So that's when I look at, like, First Touch and I hear them say, like, stuff like with Furia, like, well, Furia are now in North America, so we actually got tape on them. And I'm like, homie, all you needed was one replay against them, and you should be able to tell, your team's mistakes and weaknesses, and the other team's strengths and weaknesses. I mean, as we can see, like, compared to other coaches, I'm not even a well-known coach. Now, I do like to respect myself as a coach. I think I do know what I'm talking about. But as you can see, even I, as a coach that's not maybe as well known as, say, a Roldiz or a Chrome or anything like that, we can see, just from one replay, we're able to take all the individual issues, strengths, and weaknesses of the team in just one replay. And as we're noticing, we're seeing the same stuff. Because, for example, CRR, we talked about individually they had an issue with rushing 50-50s or not reading where 50s were going. And how'd that first goal happen? He got a 50 himself and then misread where everyone else on the pitch was. So he has a hard time reading the play whenever a 50-50 is happening. And that's happening in multiple games. Now, team rotationally wise, we're seeing a lot less passing issues, but we're actually not seeing very many passes at all. So that's another issue we're seeing here. So when Complexity, do make passes, it's really good. But I think we can. So as you see, we're not really changing their weakness. We're understanding it a little bit more as time goes on. I tend to have issue with recognizing the most optimal times to pass, but use some risky passes that reads the game really well. On the other hand, they also do not recognize other good times to pass, which leads to their offense being more one-dimensional at times. Now, Complexity still know how to make good passes, so when passing is viable, they are great at making them. but they're having a hard time at recognizing when they should pass. They have some risky passes, and they have sometimes where they should pass, and they don't. So, for example, even though rotationally and structurally they are about the same as Falcons, individually and as a team, since Complexity do actually go for some good passes sometimes, that's why I would give Complexity the narrow edge on skill over Falcons. Because they're both one-dimensional teams, but Complexity still go for slightly more passes than, say, a Falcons. And I can't wait for us to analyze Gen G here in the future. Because if we look at Gen G in the future, when we look at Gen G in the future, you'll see a team that's really great at recognizing when they should pass and when they shouldn't. Overall, some great stuff here watching Complexity. It's actually been fun watching Complexity here. Still losing here in this game. Now they eventually do tie the game up. What was that? Okay, maybe the admin was lagging here in this series. Another little bit of lag there. Okay, so whoever was observing this match was having some lag. So maybe they disconnected after the third replay and then no one saved it. Great demo there from CRR. But as we can see, rotationally, nothing's falling apart from Complexity. You'll notice as teams get more and more nervous, it's only the weaknesses that get worse. They don't get more mistakes as they get more and more nervous. The most mechanical players in the world still are very mechanical. Now, LAN can be a different type of beast. Some players have to get used to LAN, and maybe that's why they might mess up their first touches, or maybe that's where maybe more mistakes come out. But all it should take is one replay review after a LAN match to get players to know what they should focus on, and then it's back to the grind at that point. I mean, that's what Gen G did, right? They lost to Oxygen, and they didn't lose a single series after that. Looking for the 0-second goal. Almost got it. We're going to see a 0-second goal? Okay, no. Ball does drop off. And it looks like we do see a kickoff goal. Let's see how the kickoff goal happens. AJG gets dunked, and it's a goal. Alright, so I don't like Ray's Bull going for the big boost there, but it's also understandable. I mean, was he the one on the kickoff? No, he was the one cheating on the kickoff, actually. So I guess that's an issue. And AJG, he kind of hit the ball a little bit too hard. That's what ends up giving away the ball there. So, overall, just a one-time mistake, though, from Complexity, but still, very solid gameplay from Complexity. It's actually, and like I've been saying, it's been enjoyable to watch. So now let's look at Complexity versus Dignitas. Probably should look at Game 1 between those two teams. I'll probably should click main event. Oh, okay. Main event. Playoffs. Quarterfinals. And then Cole versus Dig. We do have to remember, though, in this replay, Dignitas are nervous since they're about to get... since if they win this series, they actually clinch the major without any help. But they do end up losing this. But let's see against this team what the stats look like. Stats don't mean everything, but it can show some stuff. AJG, equal on demos, and he's got a decent amount of demos. CRR's positive on demos, and Ray's Bull positive on demos as well. And I just got a notification for something. Hey, Sansbar, thank you so much for the follow, homie. Welcome to the stream. Sansbar, I believe, is the owner of Sloth Nation, I believe. Oh, they'll correct me on that. I know I mess up all the organization owners. But here we go, looking at boost to see if the average boost here is already solid. So again, unlike the last series, the average boost tends to go a little bit down. But let's see if the stolen big pads are back up. Yeah, so here we go. So we're noticing against certain teams, Complexity have a lot more stolen pads. But, for example, against Dignitas, it looks like on defense, Dignitas just don't apply much off-ball pressure, right? Because not only do Complexity have a decent amount of demos, but they also have a decent amount of stolen big pads and stolen mini pads. So keeping that in mind, and here we go, the lowest amount was still 4. So when we're noticing Dignitas on defense, Dignitas, we talked about earlier, if we look at the notes here for Dignitas, Dignitas on offense are really, really good, but on defense, they seem to not understand the idea of having someone applying off-ball pressure on defense, which gives a lot more space and pressure for the other team. And as we can see, that's being shown in the stats. We're seeing more big pads stolen. We're seeing more demos being taken against. And we're just overall, and I assume if we see... I know sometimes it shows the stats of, like, actual possession. Maybe in team games it shows this. Nah, it's not. I don't think it's showing this. Movement? Nah, okay. I think we have to look at the actual individual game to see that, which... Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if more pressure was given to Complexity. Let's see. Pressure? Oh, actually, Dignitas had more pressure, but it's not too surprising to me, since Dignitas are really good on offense, but on defense they aren't. So Complexity might be playing a lot more counterattacky. We see a lot of midfield idea here, a lot more coverage of the nets here in this game. So overall, should be solid. Look at the player stats. Yeah, this definitely, we can see they're playing faster against a team like Dignitas, whereas Drees a little too fast for his own good sometimes. But welcome to the stream, Sansbar. Pleasure to have you with us here as we continue to analyze Complexity. I'm going to go over to AJG here, because we gave a full game to CRR for the most part. Gave one a full one to Raise Bull. Let's look at AJG now. A little bit lack of boost at the beginning of this game, but like we talked about, Complexity tend to have a weaker game one. Rotates through, grabbing a boost steal. And look at this, like we talked about before, like Dignitas, look at Drees here. Alright, if we look at this from above, we can actually illustrate this in two different ways. So for Complexity, oh my, okay, now that the lag's gone. Okay, so we have off-ball pressure from AJG. We have CRR being a ball guy. We have Raise Bull filling in second behind his team. But if we look at the opponents, we have a ball guy from Evo. We have two off-ball pressure guys and no one supporting here. But as we can see, Drees, he rushes back to net. And then most likely Andy will probably turn down here to fill it up and no one's going to be watching that mid either. Let's see if that's what ends up happening. Yeah, look. See, all the players, whenever they're in front of the ball, they instantly rush back, meaning we don't have any off-ball pressure on defense. This is something we already noticed about Dignitas, but compare it to CRR and his team. Whenever he's rotating out, AJG, whenever he's rotating out, look at this. So even though Dignitas not having zero off-ball pressure, it's allowing even more time and space for Complexity, who are rotating properly no matter what's happening. Ball guy from CRR, off-ball pressure from AJG, and Raise Bull. So you see, just because the lack of off-ball pressure on defense from Dignitas, that's what's allowing for not only the demo attempts, but also the boost steals. All three players from Dignitas are in this corner. So overall, solid stuff for Complexity, but we're seeing it comparing against Dignitas. As you can see, great possession there from Andy. But look at this here from Complexity. Oh, excuse me. I want to pause this. We have a ball guy. We have a support guy, and we have someone applying off-ball pressure, or at least watching the midfield here. Compare that to someone on the ball for Dignitas, someone rotating down the front post from Andy, and then Drees rushing back straight into the net from the front post side. No off-ball pressure being taken from Dignitas. Like, look at the main difference. That's why Complexity is a better team rotationally. But for example, when we see Dignitas on offense, we'll see on offense they're actually still pretty solid. It's only on defense. That's why when we look at Dignitas, when we look at Dignitas on LAN, where defenses will be worse, they'll probably score more goals on LAN. But at the same time, since their weakness is pretty poor, it might also mean a lot more goals against for Dignitas. It's something we do have to keep in mind. Couple kickoff goals. Look at this here. AJG supports from behind. He gets the beat over Drees. This is just a great read. Overall, just look at this read here. He knows he's beating Drees to the ball here. Just because of how Drees is angled. Great read on that play. Drops it down to Raise Bull. Raise Bull puts it off the backboard. CRR reads the play really well from far away. And that will be another goal on the board. Overall, solid stuff from Complexity. And honestly, like we said, we're not seeing... Are we seeing any newer issues? Like, everyone in chat, let me tell you right now, are we seeing any newer issues being shown up in Complexity's gameplay as we've gone through? Or has it been the same issues since replay 1 of the entire event? It's been the same issues, right? It's just as it's gone on, Complexity honestly look more confident individually, but we are seeing a little bit more issues on terms of the passing thing. We're not seeing any passes, right? Whereas when they do make passes, we're seeing a little bit more issues, right? But for overall, this is going to show that you only really need one replay to determine what are the biggest issues of a team. Because as something continues on, it'll only get worse. Here we go. All right, let's see what happens here. Raise bull. Back to AJG. AJG up to raise bull. And that's one thing I will say, even though rotationally and structure-wise, we're not really seeing much. I think we're seeing just really good basic high-level Rocket League from Complexity. I'm not really seeing anything that's making the high-level rotations their own, though. For example, at the beginning of Game 1, I saw they were trying to make these really good passes, and that's normally what most people see in Complexity, these really good passes. So I think Complexity, that might be kind of doing a thing where they took 2 steps forward with how good their passing was, but now they're taking 1 step back, where they're trying to flesh out their main rotations before they add back in their really good passes. I think that's what they're kind of trying to take a step into. And honestly, it's working out really well for them, I think. So Complexity, they have a lot of time before the major. So honestly, I could see Complexity fixing their issues and being a really good play. But of course, that's a little bit less objective. The predictions I'm trying to make are a little bit more objective going into this major. But of course, if a team improves a lot, like we could see Vitality completely fix their individual skills by the major. We could. And then the structure will already be really, really solid. And we can see Vitality put on a really good show. And Dignitas, we can see Dignitas completely fix their defensive issues. They made a major. They can just work on improving and having fun at their first major as a team. So who knows? Maybe we can see Dignitas really improve their issues. But overall, right now, Complexity, really fantastic team to watch. Fast mid to raise ball. Oh, sad miss. Here we go. Great read there from AJG. And I think this is what people in NA don't really realize much, because NA teams are so fast and consistent, is that AJG is still just as good as he was even in South America. If anything, he's better. He is so good at reading where that ball is going to go before it even happens. AJG's are honestly reminding me a lot of TRK. But even slightly more mechanical than TRK, honestly. Just slightly more. As we saw, TRK had a lot of individual mechanical issues. But, for example, with AJG, we're not really seeing that. We're seeing this... honestly, it's like I'm watching TRK, but without the... I'm watching TRK, but without the mechanical mistouches with AJG. And rotationally, they're very solid. And honestly, like, watching Complexity is kind of like watching Falcons. Because Falcons, we have Ahmad, who's really poor at reading the play. And then CRR has really bad at reading the play. But at the same time, individually, they're some of the most mechanical players in the world. And then we look at O'Khalid, who had some issues with making some good touches when they're nervous or when they're under pressure. CRR kind of has similar issues with that. And we're seeing AJG is very similar to TRK in being able to read the play a couple steps ahead, while at the same time, AJG actually improves on the mechanics of TRK. So, honestly, like, if AJG actually grinded ones, I mean, I could see him being a top ones player. But of course, he would have to grind ones. He'd have to understand ones as well. But right now, I mean, like, I don't think anyone's ever drawn the connection between Complexity and Falcons. And it's just like, they are a very, very similar team. Well, how is Dignitas not scoring here? Oh my, good bump there from AJG. There we go. Even under pressure, we're still seeing constant usage of the team's ability to apply off-ball pressure to rotate really well. Now, CR has one individual mistake, but sometimes that's how it goes. When you look at the best teams in the world, it does come down to individual skill at the end of the day. And we can see AJG, honestly, after this replay, he is the... Do we have a mistake for AJG? Yeah, AJG completely fine. And even honestly, Razebull, we don't have really many individual mistakes from him. I think we did see a couple bad passes, so I guess we can clarify this team stuff as a pass into Raise Bull as a rougher time knowing when he should pass over pass. As a rougher time knowing when he should pass. Sometimes passes in riskier situations, which leads to some teams getting good interceptions on those passes. That's the only thing we can have, but AJG, I am not noticing any weaknesses in AJG's gameplay here. So that's why I want to look at Complexity versus FaZe here, a series where they completely lost, to see if there are any more individual weaknesses from AJG. Now, what game should we look at? We should probably look at one of the more important games. Let's look at Game 1 and Game 3. That's what we should look at here. Semifinals. FaZe and Complexity. Overall, let's look at the stats here, because FaZe have improved their structure a lot. Let's look at demos taken. So all of their demos. So here we go. FaZe really good at applying off-ball pressure, apparently. And that's where we're seeing a drop. But let's look at boost. Do they at least have boost? What's their boost stolen count? So their stolen boost actually dropped out. Raise Bulls is still fine, but their stolen boost and even stolen small pads are up. So maybe FaZe are slightly better at avoiding demos and at applying off-ball pressure on offense and defense. So that's honestly really interesting to look at here. And look at speed. CRR, so normally Raise Bull is the fastest player on the team, but here he's actually one of the slower players in the entire lobby. So it's going to be fun to look at FaZe versus Complexity here in 2 games. For 2 games. I think we should go back to looking at CR. Haven't looked at him in a while. Technically, the first replay we looked at him, we were switching among different perspectives. So we're going to look at CR. He has switched over to the Fennec for this game. On all the back for boost, but that's not necessarily the end of the world. Goes for a quick shot. Overall, it's an okay shot. Whoa! How come every time we're looking at one of these replays, like, I gotta see. I don't get why it's so laggy. Okay. That's a few times now. A few Complexity replays where there's just been lag on the replays. Okay, that is a poor shot from CRR. But he does go to apply off-ball pressure. Is it more maybe FaZe are better at avoiding demos individually than other teams? That could be an idea, because we see Raise Bull and AJG filling in support for each other. Ball and support. AJG. CRR having a hard time reading the play on 50-50s again. So, same issues as before. Because what it could come down to is if FaZe team is really good at rotating at this point, it literally could come down just to individual skill as to what team is better. And that's all it could come down to. Like, for example, Complexity, we saw they were dying a lot more from demos, so maybe they're a little bit worse at avoiding demos than FaZe. And that could be the slight margin of error that allows FaZe to beat Complexity. As we can see, FaZe have definitely improved their consistency a lot. So since they've improved their consistency, maybe we see some issues with... And we're seeing more issues for Complexity with just actually getting those demos, getting good shots on target. A little bit of a missed mechanical touch. So we're starting to see the mechanics under pressure from CRR tend to get worse. Great read, though. Great cut in as well. Great adaptive rotations from... That's the main difference. Like everybody, if we look at G1 versus Vitality after this and compare the rotations, you will be on my side on why I'm saying why Complexity rotationally is such a blessing to watch. Like if we want, like for me, I watched G1, then I watched Vitality the last 2 days, and now I'm getting to see some great rotational gameplay from both of these teams. Like for me, it's a blessing. And honestly, I think what I might do is I might do some power rankings for teams. So of course what we did initial predictions for how we believe the teams will do. And with those initial predictions for how teams will do, I think we can definitely see I think we should definitely do power rankings for teams, because right now I got complexity is actually going up in my opinion as solid teams. And of course, if we do power rankings based on strengths and weaknesses, that means we should be able to determine which teams should win the major that way, because we'll have stronger teams beating stronger teams. But of course, the main thing about power ranking as well, though, is some teams are more confident based on where the LAN is and everything like that. So, of course, with predictions, I think our predictions will be slightly different than the power rankings, but overall, I think it should be a really fun time. But yeah, I mean, just this type of gameplay is what I love to watch. I love to watch great rotational gameplay. Now, I don't like the give away the ball from CRR, but we've noticed that's been an issue from CR for a little bit. When he's under pressure, he tends to give away the ball a little bit. But rotationally, he is still very good at knowing where he should go, just as the rest of the team are. I would definitely say CRR is probably, if I were to pick a worse player on complexity, I would probably have to pick CRR, which might surprise some people. But at least to me, I think it's pretty understandable. I mean, like, it took a little bit to find Raise Bull's issue. Raise Bull's issue we saw only a couple times in all these replays. And so it's very, very small. I'm honestly surprised we even noticed that issue from Raise Bull. Whereas when we look at AJG, we haven't noticed really any issues from him, except maybe he needs to get better at avoiding demos. So let's see, because we have noticed AJG having a little bit harder time avoiding demos than some. Right here, yep, honestly, he should have known a player was there. Yeah, so I think we found the one issue with, maybe complexity as a whole does have rougher times avoiding demos, I think. So maybe that's a weakness we can put for complexity. Has a difficult time avoiding demolitions against demo-heavy teams. As we noticed, that's happened in a couple series. So I think we finally have fleshed out fully our notes for complexity. But honestly, it's been a very fun time, and I thank everybody for showing up to this stream. These streams have become more and more, fun to do. As well, especially now that we're done with the bad EU teams. I'm just hoping. I am fingers crossed. I am hoping that Oxygen I'm hoping EU is a top 3 region team rather than a top 2 region team. Now Oxygen, I believe they got top 4 every event, so I believe I'm hoping that's in our favor. But at the end of the day, we never know. We never know with the EU teams. CLR, do you plan on making these YouTube videos? Yeah, I'm gonna, I think tomorrow, I'm going to take all the VODs that I currently have. I'm gonna try and download them and upload them to YouTube in the best way that I can. And I think I might be able to just straight up export them to YouTube as well. So these will be uploaded to YouTube here relatively quickly as well. They'll be uncut as well because I don't have time to edit down videos, but if anyone else wants to edit down my videos and upload them to my channel, by all means. But here we go. Looking at this here from complexity. AJG misses the read. CRR ends up getting bumped. Overall, just the off-ball pressure from FaZe just slightly better, and that's the main difference. I think it's the main difference here between these two teams. And here, everyone in chat, I'll actually ask you. We've just been watching complexity all day. Would you guys want to watch this would you want to watch this third game from FaZe vs complexity, or do you guys want to see just the big difference between, or do you guys want to see the big difference that I had to suffer through with G1 versus Vitality? Like, we can look at that. I can show you guys the big difference rotationally with those two teams versus complexity, or we can just continue to look at complexity versus FaZe. Anyone want to see the comparison? I'm glad, like, today I just got home and would love to see, and would love to have easy access for sure, for sure. You guys want to see the big difference? All right, so I wonder if it'll let me just go to Regional 3 and then go to Europe. Hey! Europe, main event. And then playoffs. Quarterfinals, I think, was G1 versus Vitality. And here we go. Alright, so just to show y'all just some of the gameplay, I'm going to try to pick a close game here. Yeah, here we go. Just to show y'all the gameplay that I was watching yesterday, it was... honestly, let's stay in director camera, just so we can get an even mix. of issues here. Right off the bat, we're at least seeing some possession from Dorito. So this is good. We actually seeing some possession, but then it's a giveaway of the ball. Now how does he rotate back? He rushes back. Here we go. Sizen goes up for this ball, puts it off the backboard. Actually, it's a little bit easier if we just stay to one person's POV. So I'll stay to one person's POV. Plus we get the boost management this way. What are you doing, Mark? But how is that a goal? Okay. Well, right off the bat, we can see a poor 50 from Mark by 8. Okay. We gotta iron out what even happened here. So we have Mark by 8 going for the ball, but he's not getting any support. And then Atomic rushes back. And then Mark by 8 just leaves for a big boost. We have nothing from G1. We have no off-ball pressure. We have no one on the ball. We have no one supporting. We have just a free possession from Vitality for Alpha 54. And I'm just... Ugh. Now let's switch over to a Vitality player here. Just because I'm telling you guys, it's not just G1 that I was having to suffer through. And honestly, I'm going to look at Radosin here for this one. Now, structure-wise, Vitality were very solid, but a lot of individual issues here. Radosin crashes back to second here. Doesn't read that 50-50. He just kind of sits in net, just waiting. Now, he manages to be here for the ball, but then he ends up giving away the ball. Luckily for him, he gets back for the 50-50. And he just pops the ball across, gives away possession. I mean, I'm sure you guys can see with just the eye test, with how it feels, how different watching the complexity versus phase was to watching this. I'm not seeing more mechanics. If anything, I'm seeing less mechanics. And we are still seeing some good things, but for example, like, oh my goodness, what the heck is happening here? Gets tested to that ball. Alpha 54 gives away the ball. He does get it back. Mark Bay gets a challenge. And here comes Sizen, who cuts back in here. Look at it from Sizen's POV this whole time. Sizen. He's going to fill in second here for Rose, and he instantly goes mid. The ball's never going to come to him, so it's just a bad 50-50. Now Alpha 54 is left behind, and Alpha 54, he can't read the play, and G1 get a goal. It's just back and forth of no structure to the rotation. Just people doing what they want to do, and it's just like, ugh. Here we go. This should be a free pit. Okay, bad shot. Okay, and the players make bad shots. That's fine. But what's Reducing going up here with this ball? Going up for this ball here. Reducing gets beat, and look at this. So this is what I was talking about. So we saw how with complexity, we always had a ball guy and a support guy, and then an off-ball pressure guy. At least from Vitality's perspective, we have a ball guy, no support guy, no off-ball pressure guy at this point. No one's filling in either one of these roles right now. And then the ball gets cleared behind, and look at that. Now we're going to see G1, and G1 just gives away the ball for free, and Vitality get a free possession back again. And that's how they end up almost getting their second goal. But looking at it from this perspective again, we're seeing some issues. Again, Atomic doesn't read where the ball's going, so the ball pops out mid. Now Mark by 8's going to have to try and fill in for his position. Mark by 8, he does take possession here. But look, again, no off-ball pressure, no support. Atomic's sitting on a big boost, Doritos leaving. We didn't see any of these rotational issues from... complexity versus phase. So you guys can see why I had to suffer through Vitality and G1 the last couple of days. And because not only individually are we seeing issues, but rotationally we are seeing issues. Now, lucky for Vitality, they do at least understand there should be some structure, but they don't know how to fill in that structure. The one thing going for G1 is when they make a really good pass, they score. Like, the one thing about G1 is when they do make a good pass, the pass almost always goes in. And one good thing for Vitality is they are very structured. So normally they're very consistent, but as we can still see, sometimes the structure falls away when they want to go for a big boost. As you can see, rotationally, these teams are just not as good as other teams we've seen. Now, don't get me wrong, Team Liquid and Carmine Core, they know how to rotate. Oxygen, I haven't looked at them yet. We're going to look at Oxygen tomorrow. So everybody, if you're interested to see how good Oxygen are, remember to show up. 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST tomorrow for Oxygen Esports. So make sure to show up. Or is it Oxygen Gaming? I don't remember. Either way, we're going to be looking at them tomorrow. So be sure to show up for that. But yeah, okay. I'm done watching. I'm done watching this gameplay. I suffered enough through it before. I'm sure you guys understand at this point in time why I had some issues watching that gameplay. But here we go. Let's go back to the fall major page. Is it Oxygen? Oh, it is Oxygen Esports. All right. But everybody, let's look at the notes here for today. Not a lot here for complexity. As you can see, a ton for vitality, a ton for G1. And we look at here for complexity, CRR individually was the worst, but still not many mistakes. Raisbull had a rougher time when he should try to pass, rougher time knowing when he should pass. AJG, not really any individual mistakes. I mean, he could just get better mechanically, but that's about it. That's all we can really say for AJG. If anything, could still improve his mechanics, but I would say that's a weakness, right? So even though they could improve their mechanics, I wouldn't say that's a weakness. So AJG is going to be one of the few people that we don't have any issues for. Strengths, complexities, base rotations are really solid. And the adaptive part of the rotations are solid as well. Which shows up as complexity being one of the best rotating / structured teams in the world. When passing is viable, the team is great at making the passes and executing threatening shots. So really good strengths for complexity. They are also, due to having such a good understanding of rotations and adaptive concepts. Complexity is one of the more consistent teams in the game, in the world as well. Weaknesses, they tend to have an issue with recognizing the most optimal times to pass, which leads to some risky passes that lead to goals. So there are still some, for example, if we compare complexity to G2 slightly have, for example, if we compare G2 to complexity or G2 to Falcons, G2 are slightly better at rotating than even complexity and Falcons. But for example, G2 fall off on the individual side of things normally on EU lands. So on an EU land, complexity and Falcons are winning all the way, or at least they should. But Falcons, of course, did end up losing to G2 at that last land. But for example, on an NA land, G2 should have the win. So if I were to go back to my initial predictions, the only thing I would change actually is I would probably make this a lot closer of a series here. I would probably have complexity and G2 going to 6 or 7. Probably 7 here. It would probably go to 7 between these two teams. Whereas, for example, we honestly don't know how Oxygen and Ground Zero will do. I have Oxygen being a very solid team because they have Rise on there. For example, my power rankings for Oxygen might be outside the top 8, but maybe on land, just because of how good they are on land, maybe I'll have them actually going further. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the stream today. Hope you all enjoyed it as much as I have. It's definitely been fun going through the deep dive analysis. Tomorrow we'll be going over Oxygen Esports as we finish off the 3rd seeds. And if I remember correctly, what teams have we done so far? We have done G2. And once we're done with Oxygen, so we have done... Honestly, I have no idea where the point standings are for either one of these teams. Hey, Sprag, thank you so much for the Prime sub, homie. Thank you so much for supporting the stream, supporting me as well. And, of course, participating in Havoc throughout the season as well. So, thank you so much for all the support. I don't think I could ever thank anyone enough for whenever they do support me. So, thank you so much. Here we go. So, for EU, we've now gone over the, for the winter rankings. We've gone over G1 and Vitality and Liquid. So we've gone over the 5th, 4th, and 2nd seed. And now we're going to be going over the 3rd seed. And then for NA, we're going to be going over... Oh, wrong thing. NA, we're going to be going... We've already gone over Dignitas, G2, and Complexity. So we're going to be transitioning on to moving into the top 2 for North America. We have to look at Ground Zero for OCE. And we have to look at Secret. And then we have to look at Gaming Gladiators. Alright. So, tomorrow for day 10, we'll be looking at Oxygen Esports EU. Alright. So, thank you so much, everybody, for showing up to the stream. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for a great stream. Thank you so much, Sprag. But overall, hope you guys enjoyed today. Tomorrow, I'm going to be trying to upload all the VODs here to YouTube, and then I'll try to make it a day-by-day basis after that. But overall, thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. This is HVCLuc here, RLCS coach for Final Form Esports, Final Form Entertainment. Should probably get that right. And owner of Havoc here, signing off. So have a great night, everybody. Great rest of your day, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, see you guys tomorrow, 4 p.m. EST for Auction Esports. Peace.